Why does my Botox wear off so quickly? If the tox is too diluted, then it's not gonna last as long. And how quickly you regenerate nerves is gonna be how long or how short the Botox actually does last.
So if you have a really good immune system, you're a healthy individual, that's gonna speed up that process.
So I think people call it Brotox. They feel like it makes them seem less masculine. And I don't know what that is.
I don't know either. There are a lot of men who don't like when their spouse or significant other goes and gets injectables.
Oh, that is so true.
And what's the psychology behind that?
You never hear, husbands telling their wives, oh, don't go get a facial, right? Because that is not an injection. So I think the common denominator is the needle. When people see anything being injected, that's crazy. Why would you ever inject something in your body? Welcome to Balanced Conversations. This episode, we are going to be talking about Botox. So we get the question a lot, why does my Botox wear off so quickly? So we are going to take a deep dive into that today.
So tell us what Botox does and what it is and how it works.
So Botox is what we use aesthetically. It can have some medical properties like TMJ, migraines, underarm sweat. However, when we're talking about just aesthetic, what it does is it paralyzes the muscle so that the face, that muscle is not moving as much, which then causes the face to move more, which causes wrinkles. So when we paralyze that muscle, what we're doing is we're training the muscle to actually be weaker. So if the muscle is weaker, it's not going to move as much, or it's not going to move as it's not going to move like a lot. Like it's not going to have huge movements, right? It's going to be weaker, so it's going to take smaller steps basically.
And then that allows the skin to relax, and so those wrinkles diminish or become less apparent. Now, I don't really love the word paralyzes. So it temporarily blocks the signaling to the nerve. Mm-hmm. It doesn't paralyze it. It's not a forever. It's a temporary thing. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is, why does my Botox wear off really fast? And I think that's a fair question. I've asked that myself a few times when I've experienced it. So fast for me, typically we would see results on average between maybe 3 to 4 months of the Botox working. So if you're seeing it more along the lines of only lasting 6 weeks, mm-hmm. maybe 8 weeks, that's fairly short. Mm-hmm. And so let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. But let's start by first talking about, what is Botox? How does it work? How does it function? What does it do? So Botox is a botulinum toxin, which what it does is it blocks the signal from the nerve to the muscle. And by doing so, it's going to cause the muscle to relax, and it's going to temporarily lose its function. And by losing its function, now the skin is going to soften up. So we're mainly talking about Botox in an aesthetic setting with the muscles of facial expression, what for most people do, what crow's feet, mm-hmm. Glabella, bunny lines.
You put crow's feet, glabella.
Crow's feet, all of it. Yeah, so we're talking about an aesthetic setting, but that's how it works. And one of the major things that, for the reason why Botox would lose its function quickly is there are some muscles that are going to be a little bit more active in the face than others. So if you tend to be a little bit more of a frowner or expressive, so if you're a very expressive person, that's going to start to kind of activate those muscles a little bit more than a less expressive person. So that would cause it to wear off a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so one thing that you said earlier, a lot of times it is because of, the person specifically. It can be a lot about genetics, because what's happening is it's not metabolized like through your liver or broken down in your liver or metabolized through your kidneys or anything like that. It's actually, once the Botox has gone into the nerve, then it's done. It's done its job. And so why does it wear off? Because it's forming new synaptic,
Synaptic?
can't ever say that word. Anyway, pathways. What it's doing is the nerves are regenerating. When the nerves regenerate, then obviously they're new nerves that don't have the toxin in it. One of the other things, though, that can happen is if the tox is too diluted, then it's not going to last as long. So that's why, making sure that you're going to a injector that's advanced, that knows exactly what they're doing, because how you dilute it is can make it weaker, and also like it determines how much it's going to spread throughout the muscle. Now, if you're coming in with an already strong facial muscles because you're very expressive, then the tox is going to have to work harder, and it may not hit every single nerve in that muscle because you have such a strong muscle that it's not going to relax it as easily. So you might need more than the average person, but that's fine. You're just going to have to get more tox in one sitting, or you're going to have to get it more often.
Yep. Yeah. Also, exercise. So if you're constantly, exposing yourself to that, you're kind of increasing your metabolism. You're increasing blood flow to the area, and that's going to metabolize that toxin a little bit quicker as well, and allow those muscles to start to become activated quicker.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that people will always say, "Oh, I just metabolize, or I go through my tox so quickly," and it's like, I don't know if metabolize is the right word. So it wears off, yes, but it's again not like metabolizing like it would food or medication.
And then also, the immune system does recognize Botox as it's a protein, so it recognizes it as a foreign body, and so it puts up an immune response to it. And when it does that, that's going to kind of break it down a little bit quicker, clear it out a little bit quicker. So if you have a really good immune system, you're a healthy individual, that's going to speed up that process.
So also, like anything in your system, your genetics play a big role in everything that you put in your system, everything that you treat with, including any sort of cosmetic or aesthetics treatments. And so, for instance, let's say that you have, a hyperactive thyroid. So hyperthyroidism, that can play a role even in how long your Botox lasts. And that's very interesting because it's a correlation that most people don't make, but your genetic makeup, your hormones, all of that does play into how quickly you're going to regenerate nerves, and how quickly you regenerate nerves is going to be how long or how short the Botox actually does last. So it's very, case by case, dependent on the person and their genetics a lot too.
Yeah, also heat exposure. So heat exposure, you're going to increase blood flow. Again, going back to that, it's going to start to break down the Botox and have a shorter duration.
Yeah. So dental work is one of the things I have here in my notes. So you're an endodontist, so you do a lot of dental work. What is the mechanism behind that? So if I get my teeth cleaned, is my Botox going to wear off faster?
I don't think so. I think that, yeah, I think it comes down to if you're maybe stressed. So in that scenario, a lot of people come to the dental office and they're stressed. And so you're activating the jaw muscles. Maybe you're starting to kind of create, activate the muscles in the face, opening your mouth wide, talking, all these things. It's just more about activating the muscle. If you're activating the muscle, or at least attempting to activate the muscle, then that's going to decrease the duration of the Botox.
Yeah, I wonder too, like if the dental work probably can also stimulate facial nerves. And so if you're stimulating the nerves, then that might be one reason that it wears off quicker. One thing that I think is interesting to talk about, so for the longest time, it was just Botox. That was it. That was all that was out there. Now you have Botox, you have Dysport, and you have Xeomin. Xeomin is what we call the naked tox. It's still the same as Botox and Dysport. The only thing is that it doesn't have the additives in it. So it doesn't have the proteins. I think it's proteins, right? I think it's proteins. Anyway, it's something. But added to it, basically like a carrier, like Botox and Dysport do. So some people opt to do Xeomin because they think that it's, going to be healthier for them, better for them. And it can be if that's what they're going for. But again, I think a common misconception is okay, so the word toxin generally is a negative word. However, with Botox, Dysport, Xeomin, all of that, it's not a toxin that your body has to process the same way of an environmental toxin, a food toxin, that sort of thing. It is a toxin in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone asked me the other day, they're like, it's a wellness. So they said, I always thought though that like aesthetics and wellness, like they don't go together because one of them is like very superficial, just on the outside. And then wellness, you're, internally trying to treat and optimize and all of that. And so when the patient brought that up to me, I was like, that's interesting. I didn't even, think of it in that viewpoint or that anyone ever thought about it like that. But the reality is that, a lot of these, for us at least, we do medical aesthetic work. So the things that, like all of our skincare products are, good skincare products, medical grade, tons of clinical trials behind them. Like Plated, we just brought on Plated. That came out of Mayo Clinic, and it accidentally was found because it had the scientists and the doctors that were testing it actually noticed that their hands were improving, regenerating. And so that's how Plated, the skincare line, came out of it. But my point is that we use very, high-end, very good, healthier skincare products than anything else. I have a question for you about Botox and men. So I think people call it Brotox. So I know a lot more men get Botox now, but they also don't talk about it. Why do you think that? What is that psychological concept where men think that if they get aesthetics treatments or anything that enhances their confidence or their looks, why is that? What's behind that psychologically for men?
I don't know. You'll have to ask those men.
So you don't feel at all like you would never be embarrassed to say that you get Botox or anything like that?
I talk about it openly all the time. And
Yeah.
you can tell. I mean, I don't have it now because I do think that you need to come off of Botox, allow your muscles, excuse me, to fully activate again. Because there's studies now, or actually, I don't know if there's studies, but there's a lot of voices coming out now talking about Botox and how essentially long term that it is not a great option for the skin, and that the skin there could be some rebound effect where it's got too much laxity, and then once you come off and you've been using it for 20 years, that you're going to have maybe more of a skin dysregulation and too loose of skin because the muscles weren't activated that entire time.
So then what you need to do when you're taking a break from Botox is you need to do some sort of collagen stimulating services or treatment. So, laser genesis is great. That's, stimulates the collagen. CO2 is great for fine lines as well. So there's other options that you can do while you are, on your off cycle of Botox, basically. But yeah, I don't know. I think, I know you're the wrong man to ask about that, but I do hear they'll be quick to say like, oh, no, I would never do Botox. I would never do Botox. No, I would never do a facial. I would never do, these kind of things. And I don't know what that's about. Is it because primarily it's a, woman dominant treatment? And that's what women mostly get and always have gotten historically. And so men think, oh, if I do something that mostly only women do, then it's going to make me seem more feminine? Or is it I shouldn't care what I look like? I roll out of bed, I'm good to go. I'm not going to worry about what I look like to that extent. And then they think that they're perceived as insecure or something if they're doing something to aesthetically to enhance their confidence or something. I don't know, but I have noticed it's a common theme where men, it's more, I guess, spoken about than it has been before, but men do not like to talk about aesthetics treatments that they get.
Yeah.
They feel like it makes them seem less masculine. And I don't know what that is.
I don't know either. I think that something I find really interesting is that there are a lot of men who don't like when their spouse or significant other goes and gets injectables.
Oh, that is so true.
And they're like, I don't want you doing that.
Uh-huh.
And what's the psychology behind that? And also the reverse, there's a lot of women who are like, I don't want you using testosterone, saying that to their husband or spouse or whatever, and I don't want you using growth hormone and putting all these drugs in your body. And that's a really interesting thing that gets played both ways, when the reality is if you do safe hormone therapy, it's going to change your life and make you feel great. And maybe your significant other should be supporting you as long as it's safe and guided, medically guided. And the same thing for the other way. Like, you should be supporting your significant other, wife, to do aesthetic stuff as long as they go to a great place and they're getting good results and they feel good about it. What's the harm?
So it's a common denominator, and the common denominator is needles. So it's anything that is injected in the body, pierces the skin. So testosterone injected in the body, peptides, you hear it. The wife doesn't want the man to, the husband doesn't want the woman to, both ways. Botox, it's injected into underneath the skin, filler as well. So you never hear, husbands telling their wives, oh, don't go get a facial, right? Because that is not an injection. It's just a topical aesthetics treatment, surface aesthetics treatment. So I think the common denominator is the needle. When people see anything being injected, that's where that's crazy. Why would you ever inject something in your body? And it's a lot of times, that baby boomer generation, so not a lot of times, sometimes. And I wonder if it's because that's when heroin came into the United States. And then heroin...
Wow. How did we get talking about
heroin was injected, and so needles were only ever used before for shots or medication being injected into the skin. Heroin was the first thing that was shot into the body and is a drug. And so they have this negative correlation between any sort of injecting anything in your body.
That's
other
wild.
than like a shot from the doctor.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely heroin.
That's why.
That's why.
It's 100% why.
Yeah, no, I think you might be right about the needles. Essentially, what that's saying is like it's not reversible in a sense. And there could be some harm, and I think maybe there's some protection there, which is good. I don't think it's like bad, but to shame or to really prevent somebody, as long as you kind of talk that out and figure out and stay within the boundaries of what's medically safe. I think it should not be encouraged, but be supported.
Yeah. And as far as the testosterone goes for men, I think that what that is Women think of testosterone, and before I was in this field, honestly, I used to think this too. But I used to think that men that were on TRT, on testosterone, that it was the same as them doing steroids. And I know even a couple of my family members that I'm 37, 20, couple decades older than me. They 100% were like, that's so unsafe. Why would you ever do that? And I'm like, it's not a steroid. You're thinking of it as like a steroid that you're putting in your body. And it's not that. That was a big epidemic for a long time. I think we're kind of getting away from men doing steroids. But TRT is testosterone, the primary hormone that men need for every function in their body. And so you're putting testosterone back into the body. You're not putting a steroid in there that is literally like a drug.
Well, it is a steroid because people were putting testosterone. I mean, even bodybuilders. I think it's kind of where that came from. Think like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and all the other big guys. But regardless,
Who are all the other big guys?
well, I mean, there was Ronnie Coleman. I'm just thinking like big time Olympians. Olympians were a big thing, and they're huge, right? But they're putting massive amounts, like huge, super physiological dosages in their body that are insane. And so, they're steroids, which it's testosterone, but it might have been 3 different forms of testosterone, and maybe 10x the amount that you would give to a normal person, so that they feel better. You know what I mean? We're not trying to make bodybuilders. What we're trying to do is restore you back to the place in which your body is happiest and functions the best.
Well, the bodybuilders, so the steroids that they did it was not like testosterone cypionate.
Yes, it was.
It was? That's what they were doing?
And they were stacking it with a bunch of other things.
What were the other things?
I mean, they would use Danabol. I'm just thinking Winstraw.
So that's like a ton of different.
So you're stacking these anabolics on top of each other, and you're getting huge. But I think that's where the stigma might be associated with testosterone use, steroids. Mm-hmm. But it's actually quite safe if medically regulated.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually quite dangerous if you have very low T as a man. It doesn't just make you feel terrible. It can actually lead to a lot of dysregulation and illnesses and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's it for today.
Please share this with friends and family, anyone that you think would value this information and it would help. It definitely helps us with our algorithm, and so we greatly appreciate it. Also, quick reminder, like and subscribe below. Thank you. See you next episode.